This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Good morning. Indeed, it is the most wonderful time of the year. So much taking place on the local sports scene. The national sports scene gets center stage this evening with the National Football League draft commencing at 7 o'clock. Good morning. This is 9 to noon at KFAN, and I'm Paul Allen. The producer is Eric Nordquist, and Paul Charchian sticks around for the first segment, as he is wont to do. Draft season, because the most wonderful time of the year means go Wild tonight. Go Timberwolves tomorrow, and go Vikings with your 24th overall pick. And on a most wonderful time of the year type Thursday that feels like Christmas to some, we have gifts to open, and I'll begin. Ooh. The wrapping on this is rather shoddy. There's too much tape, but nevertheless, for pick number 24, I got a big box right here. Okay, 3-2. There's something large in this box. Let's open it up, and it is Tyler Booker, guard from Alabama.
Oh my God! How could he do that?
I happen to like this gift a lot. I like this gift a lot. You guys have gifts in front of you.
I do.
What do you have in your gift, Mr. Paul Charchian?
You know, a couple weeks ago, I made a case for South Carolina safety Nick Emanwari.
Yeah.
I have since changed my selection for Minnesota.
Whoa!
And it's not. Smart people were telling me that they love Emanwari, but he's going to have trouble in short spaces.
What were dumb people telling you?
That you should take Nick Emanwari, and that's why I said it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, come on.
Here's my new play.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying this, so I'm probably going to be wrong. But I think we can agree on this. Here's Kwesi.
Yeah.
He's on the final 6 months of his contract.
I'll open the present for you. Here we go.
No, thank you. It's taking a while. This is a longer one.
This is okay.
Longer one.
What in the heck is in that box?
Long and athletic.
Very long and athletic. You need to have somebody who's going to help out J.J. McCarthy, because the one way for sure Kwesi saves his job is to get J.J. McCarthy off a great season. So who can help? Sure, it could be Tyler Booker, Paul's choice, but there's another guy that can really help J.J. McCarthy, and it is.
What is it? It's a slender box.
Emeka Egbuka.
Who?
Yes. Emeka Egbuka.
Are they drafting Emeka Okafor and using him also at power forward for Game 4 against the Lakers this weekend by the time he gets here?
Emeka Egbuka he's the Ohio State kid, highly productive, had an 81 catch season last year. He's a pure slot guy, ran 81% of his routes from the slot, and there's nobody else on the Vikings roster that is as ready to be a slot contributor as he is. This team has, obviously, two very good wide receivers. But Addison's also got a lot of question marks around him. I can't tell you today that Jordan Addison's going to be on this team in 2 or 3 years. That, to me, is a sizable unknown. Emeka Egbuka is elite character guy, high IQ guy, catches in traffic, brings incredible toughness, footwork, and a great blocker. He is ready week 1 to be a contributor for J.J. McCarthy. I've talked myself into Emeka Egbuka for the Minnesota Vikings. If they hold at 24, and he might be there if they move down a couple of picks, he could still be there if there is a trade down scenario where you could still get Emeka Egbuka.
Eric Nordquist, before you open your gift,
hey,
you get to play Paul Charchian in the role that he assumes during the Power Trip mock draft, where you get the final analysis of said pick. So with Emeka Egbuka, a wide receiver at 24 with the Vikings, is it? Or is it? What do you got?
Ooh. Well, today I'm in a fantastic mood, and I'm excited to open my presents. So I'm going to give him the...
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give him the Charch. Well, hang on. I am going to give credit to Charch for thinking the way Charch thinks, analyzing the way Charch analyzes, and going the road least never traveled in lots of conversations in life.
Yeah.
And I love how, as we would say, enterprising the idea is.
Yes.
And with the logic that he presented, I completely understand why you would add a weapon like Ibuka to the Vikings offense to give J.J. McCarthy in the long term. If you believe Jordan Addison, may not be part of the mix, I want weapons, I want skill guys, I want touchdowns. And frankly, I mean, whether it's Tet McMillan, it's Matthew Golden, Ibuka he hasn't been as steamy as some of these other guys. He's just been as consistent and as explosive as any of those other guys. If he goes at 24, I would be happy about that. Absolutely.
What do you have in front of you, Mr. Eric Nordquist?
All right, here we go. Well, see, the thing is, it's tough because I'm looking for something with a big body. But you know how difficult it is to wrap like a cylindrical coffee mug or something like that? I mean, it's awful. Don't put me in charge of wrapping. So thankfully, I didn't do this.
Same.
I was looking for Tyler Booker. I was hoping for Gray Zabel, but it was just too expensive, so I couldn't get that. And Booker went early, and there were no Bookers left on the shelf. And then I'm thinking to myself, Walter Nolan. Well, I'd love Walter Nolan. Are you kidding me? Playmaking out of the middle. Let's go to the trenches. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen getting a little older. Everyone's coming off of injury. But where one person had been down a road, took a giant U-turn and went the other way, I, earlier than most, noted a particular position. We got one guy, borderline Hall of Fame, but he's kind of on a year-to-year contract. We got a guy that does all these dances. Now he's in Indianapolis. We have another safety, and we absolutely love him. Final year of his deal. Probably coming back, no doubt about it. But then we have a guy who makes all the plays in training camp, and then we never see him on the field. But everybody loves him. That would be Theo Jackson after Metellus, after Bynum, after Hitman. The Minnesota Vikings, if the Bookers of the world, the Nolans of the world, etc., are not available at 24, the Minnesota Vikings are going home with a fresh, brand new Nick Eamon-Ward. Safety, South Carolina. And I will say this.
I'll double up on that for you.
Ooh. Thank you, sir.
It's a nice player.
I will say this. There was part of me, just because as I'm looking at both of them, Malachi Starks is really freaking good. But the idea of going Georgia safety a couple of years after a different Georgia safety, I am a coward, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going Eamon-Ward, who's a pretty fine player himself out of South Carolina, the Gamecock.
So, Nick Eamon-Ward, I mean, we talked about him 2 weeks ago, but let me just remind people. You're getting DK Metcalf playing safety.
Well, why'd you get off him?
Well, because in tight quarters, like you put a slot receiver on him with good footwork. Yeah. He doesn't have the short space to hang with slippery players. That's the only downside on him. Yeah. But he's an amazing athlete and a freakish tackler. What I love about Eamon-Ward, you put him in the slot, the running game to that direction just got snuffed out. He is such a great physical tackler that he creates a huge problem for opposing offenses, and he's crazy fast. He can make up for when players do shake him. Eamon-Ward has got that makeup speed, and he can play all over the field. They put him at free safety, strong safety, at slot, up on the line of scrimmage, and he's just big. He's just a total physical freak. There are some limitations. We're picking at 24, not like pick 4. So I mean, there are some downsides, but I don't have a problem with Nick Eamon-Ward being a Viking. And I'll tell you this much: Brian Flores would have a hell of a lot of fun with that kid.
Now, some house cleaning items before we continue. The first segment, 9 to noon Thursday, day 1 of the National Football League draft. We have a draft party radio show from U.S. Bank Stadium this evening. Yours truly, Pete Bursich, Ben Lieber, Paul Charchian. We expect the likes of Jared Allen, maybe Adrian Peterson, Aaron Jones, Blake Cashman, Josh Metellus. We'll have several guests this evening as we walk you up to pick number 24 for the Minnesota Vikings. And you also also can watch 9 to noon right now. And for more on that, here's Nordo.
Yeah, you'll see a YouTube link. There's StreamYard links going out there as well. But whether it's on YouTube, it's Facebook, Twitch, all the KFAN social channels at KFAN 1003. And it's all thanks to our buddies at Heating and Cooling 2, who have provided all KFAN draft coverage throughout the last few weeks. HeatCool2.com for details on what they do. Tremendous services in the HVAC world. But Heating and Cooling 2 is bringing us live on video throughout the day, as a matter of fact. So buckle up, sit down on the couch, crack one open, and watch us on the stream.
We have one open segment, 9 to noon today. It's the next segment. And we would like your talkbacks on what you want the Minnesota Vikings to do at pick number 24. Go to the free iHeartRadio app. You'll find the microphone. You have 30 seconds to opine on what you think is best for the Minnesota Vikings at pick 24 this evening. They have 4 picks into the draft as of now. And via the Power Trip mock or via 9 to noon, we've shared what has led us to certain conclusions. But for me, I do believe at pick 24, an offensive lineman will be selected this evening.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I'm not completely married to the 1-2 here, Booker, Zabel, Booker. I do believe a fair amount of the Gray Zabel steam that he will go in advance of 24. Tyler Booker, 6'5", 321, 34.5-inch arms. He was a team captain at Alabama, played both guard spots, started one game last year at left tackle. And if and or when they select the guard from Alabama, I think what you'll hear after he's ours is bragging about his football intelligence, being high-end, tough, smart, poised, born leader. Booker and J.J. McCarthy were teammates at IMG Academy during high school, and from what I've been told, have become quite close. So I think NDSU left guard Gray Zabel's a definite possibility. I just wonder at 23, if you're specifically for you, Paul, because you put a receiver to the Vikings at 24. Mm-hmm. Functioning snipe ability at pick 23, whether it's a defensive back like Nordo selected. Yep. Green Bay could need one of those.
They do, and they need corners.
Everybody always needs offensive line, and Green Bay could use a receiver. So the functioning snipe ability with the green and gold right in front of the Minnesota Vikings, any concern with that?
Yes, there is concern with that because Green Bay, they need corner number 1. They need a wide receiver, and I've got a wide receiver going to the Vikings at 24. They don't need safety, but they also need defensive line help, tackle and end. And so the Vikings, that's a lot of overlap with where the Vikings want to go. So there is a prospect that stupid Packers, one pick before us, take a guy the Vikings really covet and would otherwise select at 24.
The Minnesota Wild host Vegas this evening. That game's about 8:15, 8:20. Game 3 of round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Timberwolves are hosting the Lakers tomorrow night. By the way, are you over the Bucks collapse yet?
No.
We're doing a Paul Charchian welfare check here.
I'm still struggling. It was 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
Still struggling a little bit.
Okay.
Yep.
What have you thought of the first 2 games with the Howl?
Couldn't have been more different, obviously. And the second game especially frustrating when we kept going to well with things that were not working. Ice cold shooters. Naz, who was incredibly important in the first game, gets immediately 4 fouls. And I don't even know how he's on the court playing with 3 fouls in the middle of the second quarter. So, got behind. They kept it interesting a couple of times, but overall, it was a really frustrating, disappointing game in what was effectively a knockout moment where you could flex and put yourself in a position where you almost could not lose the series. And the Wolves played their worst game since the Bucks game.
Now, 9 to noon, we are in search of your talkbacks for the next segment involving the Minnesota Vikings and the draft in totality, but specifically pick number 24. For instance, if they finish with 4 picks, then I, in no particular order, with the exception of the first pick, I would go offensive line. I would make that, as 9 to noon is shared now for weeks to a month and change. An offensive lineman, I think, is prohibitively favored at 24. After that, I would definitely put defensive back. So somebody from a defensive back standpoint. Yeah. And then as you move on through the draft, if they end up with 4 picks, I would like to see them finish with an offensive lineman first, then in no particular order, a defensive back, a defensive tackle, a young defensive tackle, and Colorado wide receiver, punt returner Jimmy Horn Jr. I mean, I've been all over him for a month and a half, 2 months. Jimmy Horn Jr. is going to go very deep in this draft, and just to a man. And if I'm wrong, then we can call it out. He will become the best punt returner in the National Football League within 2 years. He is dynamic on special teams. I think he might be 5'8", maybe 5'9", just a little thing. So I don't really know how much you could use him offensively, and I don't even know if they're going to take him. But that's so from a wide receiver trick standpoint, that's who I like deep in the draft on Saturday. If they finish with 4 picks, position-wise, what would you like to see them address?
Offensive line and guard specifically is near the top of the list. Cornerback, you're saying you're saying secondary. I'll be more specific. Mm-hmm. This team is a cornerback. Mm-hmm. I'd rather go to war with the safeties we have if I need to. The cornerback position absolutely needs help.
See, the reason that I don't pigeonhole it like that is Byron Murphy Jr. is still young in his career.
Yeah.
So he's locked in.
Yep.
Isaiah Rodgers, whom they love, now they just got to be right, he's young in his career. So Okuda's a wild card here. Blackman.
Okuda's that's the nicest thing you can say about it.
Blackman is a wild card off injury, but young in his career. It just feels from a cornerback standpoint that post-draft, somewhere during the course of organized team activities around minicamp, whatever, that a 1 year, like they'll bring somebody in like they did Shaq Griffin and or Stephon Gilmore last year to solidify that part of the equation. I'm guessing with that because the position flexibility and the way Flores uses all of these players, specifically the safeties. I mean, Metellus plays outside linebacker. He plays nickel corner. He plays free safety. He plays strong safety. Eman Wari, Starks, players like that can do that for you and take heat off press corners, you know?
And Metellus does cover a lot of those bases, though. And that was one of the other reasons I got off of Nick Eman Wari for the Vikings at 24 is there is a lot of overlap with how they use Josh Metellus and how theoretically they would use Nick Eman Wari. But at corner, Paul, you highlighted guys we're okay with, that we think are going to be all right. Byron Murphy had a really nice second half of his career, our season, got repaid. Mm-hmm. Isaiah Rodgers, I'm optimistic about him. After that, it falls off the table. And if you've got, you have 3 cornerbacks on the field, 75% of your plays. And if God forbid one of them gets injured, this team just doesn't have depth at corner. So to me, cornerback is arguably the single biggest priority for this team, and I'll be disappointed if that first or third or somewhere by trading somewhere they don't address that position early.
Courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. What's on deck 9 to noon includes your NFL draft related talkbacks next segment. The only break from the draft today is Anthony Lapanta, the television play-by-play voice for the Minnesota Wild. Big Game 3 this evening at XL Energy Center. Puck drop about 8:15, 8:20. The heir apparent Anthony Lapanta on Game 3 against Dem Golden Knights at about 9:40. Nacho Lieber joins us at 10. Courtney Cronin, ESPN, on the Bears approach. The Bears have 4 of the first 72 picks. 10, 39, another, and then 72. So Ben Johnson and crew are in fine fettle this evening. CC will join us middle of the program. Dan Miller, the play-by-play voice of the Detroit Lions, he'll join at about 11 o'clock to aid us with the Lions approach. Then Alec Lewis from The Athletic and TheAthletic.com brings us home at 11:20. Paul Charchian, I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday football feast, okay?
You'll see me tonight at 7 o'clock at U.S. Bank Stadium.
I'll see you tonight at the Palatial Purple Paradise, and then tomorrow we will feast, okay? That's Paul Charchian. I'm Paul Allen. Eric Nordquist produces 9 to noon. He's assembling the talk back so your voices can be heard around the corner. But as importantly, he has the cash thing and some money to give away, and here we are.
Yeah, the Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword grand, and you might win $1,000 with the keyword grand at KFAN.com.
I'll predict it. Not once, but twice the Vikings trade back. They're able to draft back, still pick at the end of the first round. Watch it, bank it, bet it. See ya.
So my man wants a Nordo parody for the Friday football feast, in that the team decided to a trade back.
Quasey don't dance. He just pull up his pants and do the trade away.
Quasey don't
trade
dance.
back.
Say that again. Quasey what?
I think it's Quasey. Yeah, it's something.
Quasey
don't dance. And just pull up the pants and do the rock away.
Right.
And lean back. Yeah, so it'd be Quasey don't dance. He just pull up his pants and do the trade away.
He had his big boy pants on during free agency.
Free agency never fails
on the Quasey train. Yeah. Quasey train.
Free agency never fails on the Quasey train.
I'm
trade back.
I'm not in the trade back big boy pants camp. What about you?
Well,
I like 24.
I like 24, and the only thing that gives me pause and makes me think about a trade back is I've heard it multiple times now, and I'm not going to pretend I've watched film on all these guys, but they do speak of this. There's kind of this, the meat of the draft where the getting is at its best. And they're putting that somewhere in the area of 20 to 70. Kind of feels like an arbitrary spectrum or window there. But if Quasey feels that there's an opportunity for him to get an extra top 70 pick out of some sort of trade back, I think that he would be very much open to making a deal and making that happen. The issue that comes up is, and we were talking about this last night on the stream with Alec, the way I see it, is if that is true, there's this window of 20 to 70 where I'm analyzing my guys, my draft board, and the guy that I have at 25 best overall is really, truly just a hair from being 40. I got this giant clump, this pile of people that I have very similar grades on. Then I'm thinking to myself, why would the Giants, let's just use them as a third pick of the second round, why would they move up or need to move up to 24? If that, and there's never really anything truly conventionally wise in terms of opinions on this, but if that truly is how the draft lays out, how difficult would it be to get a team to make that kind of move? So to the talkbacker's point, if there is a trade back, could it be a couple of spots? I'm not dead on that idea at all. And it could be, and they could get to dealing and all of that with Quasey, and he's pulling in an extra late third here, maybe a fourth to move back a couple of spots, stuff like that. But I do have a problem with the idea of Vikings need picks, so they're just going to move out. Because I think it's going to be a very difficult and potentially costly situation for Quasey, where he's going to move back 8-9 spots. I don't think he's going to get the type of equity that he would get, that you would envision or want in that type of trade back. So I think it's going to be very, very tough to do anything but stick and pick at 24. And maybe it's Tyler Booker. How about that?
And that's pragmatic, and I understand that. But if to do that, if you think there's somebody of the blue chip variety and you want to move back to get picks, like I said during the power trip, I mean, you have to really have a handle on who you, in essence, know is going to go 25, 26, 27, 28, just something like that.
And additionally, to build off of that, why it'll be so hard is I think in a lot of ways, the leverage that the Vikings would have in moving back would mean that a Booker is on the table, that type of player is in the mix. So what you would be doing is you'd be stiff-arming the idea of Booker to move back strictly for potentially another top 70, top 80 pick. And I just think it's going to be very difficult to do that. So I lay in line with you where at pick 24, a selection should be made.
If the Minnesota Vikings covet an offensive lineman, specifically an inside offensive lineman at 24, there is a fair possibility that if Tyler Booker or North Dakota State University's Gray Zabel, if those are the top two that they like, well, I mean, there is a distinct possibility both those guys are not available at 24.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then we would need to be privy to the draft board and the grades to see what the fall off is to the next guard. Because if either of those two are not available, then I shove all my chips to the middle of the table on defensive back. I don't know if it's going to be a corner. I don't know if it's going to be a safety. But I would shove all my chips middle of the table on that for whatever their pick's going to be. But, from a defensive tackle standpoint, this is the day that we can recall all of the stuff that we've heard, we've shared, we've talked about over the course of weeks and months. And from back to the combine, there were two polarizing position groups that supposedly were so deep, one perhaps in unprecedented fashion. Running back, defensive tackle, and running back. The defensive tackles they're talking about are called three techniques, where think Aaron Donald, think Quinnen Williams for the New York Jets.
Dexter Lawrence
would be potentially the A topic with Donald gone. Great call. So it's that type of defensive tackle. Running back wise, we've had people say there are going to be 30 drafted, and I happen to believe that.
Wow.
The late steam is the tight end draft, specifically the top two, but then about 5 or 6 after that are going to play and play immediately. The top two, Penn State, Michigan, Penn State, well, those guys supposedly are game changers right out of the gate. But as the days have gone on, it's for those with whom I chat or what I follow, the potency draft long with those three techniques and defensive tackles, it maybe is not all that is glimmering necessarily is gold as you continue to move through the draft. So I'm not saying that you can't get good defensive tackles on Friday or Saturday. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, what they have now, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond, the players that they have now, 2 of them are young, 2 of them are veterans, and the veterans are both coming off injuries. So drafting a 3-technique defensive tackle somewhere in this draft, if you believe it is as deep as people have made it sound, I mean, that's nearly a 10 of 10 for me.
Yeah.
That you got to find one of them and be right with that player in case one of the front two happens to get hurt and you're not as exactly, overly sold with what you currently have, then invest in it,
I do see where you're going with it. I would ask this though, rhetorically, kind of if the defensive tackle class is deep, but it may not have the day 3 staying power as some other groups.
Right.
Would that lend credence to the idea of potentially going D-tackle at 24 if there's a guy you love? So I mentioned Walter Nolan as we were doing our bit last segment.
Very nice player.
Derek Harmon, and similar to the way that you've spoken of Gray Zabel, I do believe that they'll be gone. And so, whether it's Booker or Zabel, et cetera, at 24, that would be my A topic from an O-line standpoint. But I actually, as much as I've peeked at those safeties and just thinking about that as being an option, and it sounds like it very well could be defensive back wise. Maybe it's a corner, Jahdae Barron. I love that cat. I think he will probably go early, if not to the pack at 23.
He'll start day 1 for whomever drafts him.
And exactly. And so, but if Harmon or Nolan or some of these cats were available, I would be over the freaking moon if Kwesi was able to send that card into the league and pick one of those guys at 24. That would be amazing. Forget the idea of trade back. It'll save me time on a parity, and it will also fortify that D line for years to come. And it's copying the Eagles. It's the idea of body on body on body on body. They've done that with the trenches in Philly for years. And I would love to have somebody like that in our mix. So D tackle, if it isn't day 3 strong, or it doesn't have that staying power, maybe that means that the D-tackle's got to be something to look at on Thursday or Friday.
And lastly here for tonight, in the years, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been the general manager with the likes of Ryan Grigson and the personnel staff by his side. O'Connell and the coordinators certainly have a say in what will transpire this evening and has transpired. You know, it is interesting to note the players they've taken in the first round go University of Georgia, USC, Michigan, Alabama. So I'm not saying the general manager is intoxicated with the Power 5 schools.
The helmet schools?
The helmet schools. But I'm not saying that it doesn't matter in this equation.
FCS, though.
So if you're splitting a green and gold helmet compared to that of a member of the Crimson Tide,
right?
It simply logically speaking, Booker or those from Alabama have faced competition that is higher end consistently on a weekly basis than somebody from an FCS school.
Right. It doesn't play into it as much anymore, but I always laugh. You know, Meat Sauce will say two things in private and public conversations. The NBA draft is rigged and always take somebody from Kentucky. Right. Now, in recent years, Coach Cal's gone the whole thing, so maybe we can change the name, but there is some credence to the idea and a belief that you just Auburn could potentially be one of those schools. NIL might be screwing the whole thing up. But the idea of I'm going to take high-end equity, things are just different in the SEC. There can be probably, and I would almost guarantee that there are those with that philosophy. Like in the end, if they're pretty damn close, I'm going to take the guy that played in maybe the toughest conference in the sport.
But that is not in any way to rule out the player who widely was considered by insiders and key media members as the one who outperformed everybody at the Senior Bowl, and that's Gray Zabel from North Dakota State University. And I've shared this before. You know, when certain people share this person was the best at the Senior Bowl, they generally are highly drafted, and they generally are good in the NFL.
Yeah.
So if Gray Zabel is wearing purple, going from green and gold to purple and gold, A, it wouldn't surprise me, and B, I think people would like him a lot.
Well, in your conversation real quick with Tim Polasek, he kind of went down that road. If you remember chatting with him, he kind of talked about the comparison of the steam behind Zabel and the steam behind Carson Wentz as he found his way near the very top of the draft. Yep. So if it plays out, if the head coach was giving you any lean in terms of maybe some of the teams and some of the people that he's talking to as he supports Zabel in his draft run, maybe that tells you a bit about where he'll land tonight, which would be probably higher than 24.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch,
thank you, St. Paul.
Gone with those Minnesota Wild tonight. Game 3, Stanley Cup Round 1 series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And TV play-by-play voice Anthony Lapanta amplifies that scenario when 9 to noon continues on KFAN.
Theodore, and he lost the handle on it. It's a 2-on-1 for Minnesota. Kaprizov in, a shot, save, rebound, he scores! Kaprizov's first shot caught the pad of Hill and then trickled through the 5-hole, and Minnesota has a 4-0 lead.
Lapanta.
Anthony Lapanta, TV play-by-play voice for the Minnesota Wild. It's Paul Allen. How was your Vegas trip? Not a bad city to spend multiple days, right?
Sure wasn't. 5 nights in Vegas. I don't know that I've ever been there that long before, but the games were terrific. The atmosphere was good, and all was good. I can think of a lot of other places where it would be lower on the list to spend 5 nights, that's for sure.
Did you happen to head to Mastro's at the Cosmopolitan and teach them how to properly prepare steaks?
I always love that one.
Not on this trip. I've been there before. I like that Mastro's, but this trip, no. There was no steak on this trip. There might be when we go back for Game 5. This one, I went out to one of my favorite spots is off the Strip, a little Italian place called Bootleggers, and next to the Copa Room, where on Monday nights you can catch Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns. So I took advantage of that on Monday night, but there was no steak on this last trip.
There may have been no steak, but there was plenty of beef in game number 2. And off that tweet you put out yesterday at Anthony Lapanta, the Wild has out-hit Vegas through the first 2 games. I think it was 69-37. And Foligno has 23 of those hits through the first 2 games, and with no infractions called, no arms in the air by the officials. So is that an approach against a heavy team like Vegas that you expected to be effective, the hitting, the heavy checking approach?
Well, it's interesting because Vegas is known as a big, strong, heavy team, and they are. Their defensive core is among the biggest in the league, but they're not a real heavy hitting team. In fact, the Wild had more hits than Vegas over the course of the season. They had more block shots than Vegas over the course of the season. But it's an area of the game where I thought the Wild had to be able to maintain discipline. That was one of their undoings the last time they were in the playoffs a couple of years ago against Dallas, where they got caught running around, they took penalties, and lost their discipline in that series. And that combined with the fact that they couldn't kill a penalty wound up being the difference. And in this case, I thought they had to be able to be physical for sure, but the discipline part that you mentioned is the more important, and that has really been significant. Wild have taken 2 penalties in 2 games, and I expect we might see a little more than that. I mean, each team's only been penalized twice through the first 2, and I think that probably evens out a little bit. But Foligno, among the most significant in this series, has been able to be physical but yet be effectively physical, where it's not just running around making a hit for the sake of a hit or for trying to put a guy through the wall. They've been hits that have created loose pucks. They've been hits that have led to scoring chances, and I think that's been a big part of the Wild's success so far in the series.
What, Anthony? What do you like about the Wild's chances to win the series moving forward? Because it's more about it than me, man. But I didn't think they were bad in game 1, but I also felt like Vegas was the right team the entire game. And then in game 2, they absolutely stomped the Golden Knights. So, off what you've seen through the first 2 that can become common thread, what do you like about their chances to win the series moving forward?
Well, I think there's a couple things. Number one, I think we've seen, and I actually thought it again, that 5-on-5 the Wild would be able to put Vegas. And I think the teams have been pretty even, 5-on-5 in this series. And I think the Wild have a slight edge in goaltending. I think Philip Gustafsson over the course of the season has been, I'd say, just a notch ahead of Adin Hill, and I think he's been better than Hill so far in this series. I think the area where I thought coming in, somehow, some way, 2 things would have to happen. The Wild would have to have an edge in special teams, and they have not yet. Now, they haven't been a big part of the series because there have only been 2 power plays for each side. But I think if there's more than that, the Wild have to be able to play even or slightly ahead in the special teams. And then I thought their stars had to be able to match the Vegas stars, and not just in feel and flow, but they had to score at a level that could match the Vegas stars. And so far, the Wild stars have been better. Boldy and Kaprizov have been better than Eichel and Stone so far in this series. And if that continues, the Wild will win this series. And, they're going to have their hands full. I think Eichel and Stone haven't been at their best yet. We'll see their best at some point during this series, and might be tonight in game 3. But at some point, they will ramp up their game, and the Wild will have to be able to match that. But if they can maintain it, if Kaprizov and Boldy outscore Eichel and Stone, the Wild will win this.
The Wild has played Las Vegas pretty well when games are not on weird back-to-backs. I mean, like when Eichel had that hat trick, the Vegas caught, correct me if I'm wrong, the Wild on a back-to-back traveling back from Dallas, 3 games in 4 nights. So that has some context to it also. But with Vegas and their coach getting after them after game number 2, what do you expect from the Golden Knights tonight that may be different from the first 2 games?
Well, and you're right. Cassidy did get after him. And the regular season series, I thought there were some aberrations to it. And they played 3 times, and all 3, the Wild were on the back end of back-to-backs, twice with travel involved. And now Vegas was on the back end of back-to-backs in 2 of those, but one of them was They played the Rangers in Vegas the night before the Wild flew in from San Jose after playing the Sharks. So there was a little bit of that. The other thing was Eriksson Ek only played one of the 3 games. Kaprizov only played one of the 3. So Vegas never really saw the true Wild. But now, if I'm Bruce Cassidy, if I'm Vegas, I'm looking at this saying, all right, guys, we've played this team 5 times. They have yet to get to 25 shots on goal in a game. We've held them to an average of under 20 per night. And if, again, now I'm putting myself inside the Vegas room, and I'm saying, look, for the last 40 minutes of Game 2, we had the puck. We had the better of the play. And, yes, they beat us, but they beat us because for 10 minutes we got knocked off of our game, and the Wild scored 3 times in the last 10 minutes of the first period. That would be the spin I'd be delivering if I was Cassidy. And so I think we'll probably see we might see Vegas's best effort so far in the series early in the game in St. Paul tonight. I think this is they're the deepest team maybe in the league. Like Dallas might be the only team that I'd put up there like lines 1-4. Vegas is deep, and their defensive core is solid. I think that's where they look at it as they've got an edge, is that we don't have to overplay a top line. We don't have to play a top 4 defenseman as much as Minnesota's playing them. We're in this for the long haul through the series and the playoffs. That's where I would assume that Cassidy's probably coming at this, where if I'm John Hines, I'm coming in saying, hey, now I get a chance to match up tonight. Eichel and Stone, when they were at home, they got to dictate where they played. Tonight, when they hit the ice, Eriksson Ek's going to be on the other side. Brodin and Faber are going to be on the other side. And good luck trying to get on your game playing against the best we've got. So I think that's the intriguing matchup to see tonight, is now that Minnesota gets to dictate, and it's not 100%. You don't get the match every single time, but I would bet tonight that there won't be very many shifts where Eichel's on the ice and he's not going up against Eriksson Ek and he's not going up against Brodin and Faber. So I think the battle is going to be interesting. One of the intriguing parts of playoff series is always the adjustment part. And I was talking about this a little bit last night, that one of the big challenges is, can you effectively make changes even when you're coming off of a win? Because sometimes coaches have a tendency to, well, this worked. Why would we change? The reality is, when you're going up against the same team 7 times, they're going to make changes tonight. Vegas will have an adjustment tonight. So Minnesota's got to come into it and be willing to make some minor adjustments. Yes, you won Game 2, but what do you have to do better in Game 3? Where can you make an adjustment that might force Vegas's hand in Game 3? And that'll be one of the interesting things to watch tonight.
Indeed. And off that,
Lapanta.
John Hines, coach of the Wild, joins 9 to noon weekly. And yesterday, he stressed lineups are game-by-game situations. Now, I mean, they're, wholesale changes and like 3 players are healthy scratches who played in the first 2. Nobody's counting on that. But like with the 19-year-old defenseman, Zeev Bouillon, do you think there's a chance potentially that he's not in the lineup tonight?
I think there's a chance, and I haven't talked to John about the lineup yet at all for tonight, but I'd be a little bit surprised if we didn't see John Merrill in one of these 2 games at home. I don't know for sure if they would lean toward tonight in Game 3 or Saturday afternoon in Game 4. It's a little bit of a quick turnaround with a late start tonight and an afternoon game on Saturday. And Hines has stressed that when you look at teams that make runs, deep playoff runs, they very rarely are playing 6 defensemen. Most of the time it's 7 or even 8 guys that you'll see over the course of that. And I think you have to use everything that's at your disposal. And John Merrill's been good for Minnesota this year. I'd be a little surprised if we don't see him in one of these 2 games. And with Zeev, I think it's interesting because if there had been more power play opportunities in these first 2 games and you'd had more of an opportunity to see him get his feet on the ground at NHL speed, maybe his game would feel different. Because the other part is that when you're on the road and you can't dictate matchups, it's a little harder to throw your third pair out there and know that they might all of a sudden get bottled up in their own zone against the Eichel and Stone line. But there's only been 2 power play chances for Minnesota. They didn't practice between games 1 and 2. They didn't practice yesterday because they were flying home from Vegas. So there haven't even been those chances to just get him more touches with the power play guys, with the top end guys. So, we probably haven't had a fair chance to assess how good Williams' game has been. And he's been fine. I don't think he's been as impactful as he may have been if things were different in the situations in these games. So maybe tonight's a night to let him just step back and relax a little and throw John Merrill in there and then come back with Williams in game 4. I'm not sure, but my guess would be that we'd see Merrill in one of these two. And then the other question is, within the forward lines, will there be an adjustment? And Hines made an adjustment with Hartman and Rossi between games 1 and 2. I don't know. I think we need to see more from Marco in this series. But so far, Ryan Hartman's played well enough where he forced that hand. He pushed his way up in the lineup. And, it'll be interesting to see if there's any adjustment there. I'm not sure what John has in mind, but I think we could see something different to try and ignite or light a little spark under Marco Rossi for game 3.
Off that, Anthony, what are some things with Ryan Hartman's game that you've liked through the first 2?
Well, I think he's been more like the Hartman we saw a couple of years ago that scored 34. He's been a fiery competitor. He's been an agitator, but he's also been disciplined. And I think when you look back at game 1, he took the cross-check to the chin, wasn't called, but there was no retaliation. He got hit by Barbashev in open ice that could have been called interference. It wasn't called, but there was no retaliation. And then he ultimately did draw the only power play that Minnesota got in that game. But I think the biggest thing is that we've seen him not allow non-calls to get under his skin, where then he's lost his mind and all of a sudden wound up taking a cheap shot. Or, you think about that cross-check from Haig to his chin. Absolutely should have been called. Absolutely a missed call. But there was no turnaround and a whack across the shins or anything from his part. It was, all right, well, I didn't get that call. Let's keep playing. And I thought he was really good in game 1. And then I thought when Hines switched the lineup and put him with Nyquist and Foligno for game 2, their shift about 5 minutes into the game might have been the most important shift of the whole game. And they didn't score, but Vegas had the puck for the first 4.5 minutes. And all of a sudden, they had a shift that swung the momentum in Minnesota's favor. There were a couple big hits by Foligno on the shift. There were a couple good wall plays by Hartman on the shift. And then it was their next shift where they scored Minnesota's second goal. And I just thought they did a great job of shifting the momentum. And so many times that's what you need from your third and fourth line guys, is a shift that doesn't always necessarily result in a goal, but it results in changing the feel of a game. And Hartman has the ability to be that kind of player when he's on his game, because he is physical. He is a competitor. He is a feisty guy and a little bit of an agitator in him, but he also has skill. And so when he brings that, but brings that with discipline, he can be a really dangerous player.
Anthony, lastly, so off that, what do they do with Nicholas Haig? I mean, if it's the regular season, it's dramatically different. I get that. Is it just cool that he cross-checks Hartman in the face and punches Kaprizov twice and the second one right down to the ice, nearly knocked him out? I mean, there's just no fighting in the playoffs, right?
Well, there can be fighting, but I think Minnesota in that spot was, in both cases, they did the right thing by not retaliating at that moment. And the little skirmish by the net where there's a whole bunch of guys throwing punches, and in the playoffs, maybe it results in a guy from each side going. Haig's punch to Kaprizov in the chin during the regular season probably gets called. I thought it was interesting, though. It just felt like the officials at this point had decided that we're just not going to put a team on the power play in this game. But you think about when Hartman got cross-checked by Haig, that game 1 was still very much hanging in the balance. And if somebody goes and takes a run at Haig at that point and winds up with Minnesota being a man short, maybe it ends any chance of a comeback in that game. And the same thing if Kaprizov gets popped in the chin, Minnesota's up in that game. What if they retaliate and put themselves a man short? Now all of a sudden Vegas scores a power play goal and that building erupts and the Wild are hanging on for dear life the rest of the way. I think tonight you may see, there could be a controlled response to that. But, you could throw in Dorofiev's sloop wood on Eriksson Ek. I mean, during the regular season, somebody might run over and take a shot at him. And I just think Minnesota's maintained discipline so well, and it's been a really even-keeled team all year long. They've taken on the personality of John Hines. And so I think we may see something if the game were to, let's say Vegas is up a couple late in this game or up 3 or something, where then maybe a message is sent. But I'd really be surprised if there was some kind of response in that way early in this game tonight. I think Minnesota has spoken with their play. They've spoken with clean hits, with a physical style, and they've spoken on the scoreboard so far with their response. And I really think I'd be surprised if we saw the team lose sight of that, and all of a sudden Foligno or Trenyon or somebody takes a run out of the flow of the game at a guy like Haig. Now, if Haig's got the puck in the corner and 17's on the ice, he just has that cloud. I think he had his teeth into the plexiglass about 6 times courtesy of Foligno in Game 2. I think, you'll see somebody make sure that a check on Haig is finished, but I don't think it's going to be a let's go after him and drop the gloves. I just don't think Minnesota wants to get off their game in that way.
Appreciate the time, my brother. Have fun tonight. Let's stay in touch, all right?
Yep, anytime.
See you, bud. Anthony Lapanta, TV play-by-play voice for the Minnesota Wild. Second hour NFL Draft Round 1 is this evening. Ben Lieber, beloved Nacho Lieber, joins 9 to noon next.